Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa's unity government now has 5 parties in the mix, but some of the ANC's fiercest rivals, like the MK Party and the EFF, band together in opposition to its partnership with the Democratic Alliance. Also, Ghana risks losing millions of dollars worth of life-saving medication unless it pays outstanding fees for the cargo to be cleared. Dozens of containers of donated drugs have been stuck in port since last year and could expire. Meanwhile, medics in the northern Ethiopian region of Tigray reckon that more than 120,000 women were raped during the brutal 2-year war with the federal government. Many have been rejected by their families, are psychologically and physically scarred, and need special care. But hospitals are struggling to find the resources needed to help. Well, to our top story, and it's South Africa's political landscape that is still settling after the ANC's rush to form a government of national unity after failing to win a parliamentary majority in last month's election. Now, the former Liberation Party's leader, Cyril Ramaphosa, may have been re-elected as president last Friday, but the ANC is still announcing new partners. The collective that it's cobbled together so far represents about 273 seats in the National Assembly. Anne Wenzel joins us now with more. Anne, so this week started with more announcements from the ANC. So who else is in now? And considering that they had already negotiated enough backing to get lawmakers to vote Ramaphosa back in on Friday, why is the ANC still chasing allies?
So a large part of this basically looks like it's optics. We have the ANC in the Government of National Unity, so that's number one, the DA number 2, the IFP number 3, the PA who announced on Friday basically that they were in, and then now the Good Party is also in, so that's 5. And as you said correctly, 273 seats. So why do they need more allies? But they themselves saying they are still talking. And some of this largely is optics because of the coupling with the DA, the natural kind of opposition, the DA seen as being the party of white power, and some of the racist politics that carry over from the former apartheid government. And of course, the labor laws that they have very publicly been against, the wage bill, the basic minimum wage. So they're not seen as particularly pro-poor, which the ANC is, which we have a big problem with poverty. We have a big problem, with unemployment. So how do you then enter into a marriage of convenience, as Julius Malema of the EFF said, with a party that basically opposes that, does not apologize for opposing that, and is very vocal about it. So you pull in as many of the other parties as you can to balance how this looks and how this makes the general voting public feel about the fact that you have now basically joined forces with the enemy. And the enemy from these ideological standpoints and these bare bones kind of grassroots bread and butter real issues on the ground. So the ANC then saying, look, it's not just the DA, it's Party X and Party Y and Party Z and Party F and Party G, so that you have that whole appearance of we're not just in this with the DA. But of course they are.
So with the DA now no longer being the opposition, what's left? What's happening on the opposition side? Is it consolidating itself as well?
So indeed it is. And again, on Friday, in fact, in the morning, an hour before the first session of the National Assembly, constituting the new parliament, an hour before, Julius Malema had a press briefing with a number of the other smaller parties, and they announced that they were starting the Progressive Caucus, and that the Progressive Caucus was really going to stand against everything that they believed this new ANC-DA marriage meant. Again, poor, pro-poor, talking about land issues, talking about race and parity and economics, and all those things that people are really concerned about. So, on the one hand, we have the economics of, Joe, every person in South Africa, which is putting food on the table. And on the other hand, we have the economics of big business. And this is where the MK has now also announced that they are joining forces with the Progressive Caucus. They also very strongly stated that they wanted nothing to do with the sellout ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa, very strongly linking not just the ANC, but the ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa to an ANC that has moved very far from where it began and has moved very far from being the ANC of the people, from being the pro-poor ANC, the ANC that wanted human rights for all and that wanted to pay attention to especially the needs of African South Africans, considering where they come from the apartheid era. And of course, we have Jacob Zuma saying, look, we're still saying the elections were rigged. We are still saying that we raised issues with the IEC that were not addressed, and raising the fact that the IEC had 7 days to finalize the vote and could have taken that time to potentially do a recount, but that it chose not to, and saying that they are being very peaceful despite narratives to the contrary from their enemies. The words of Jacob Zuma and the MK party, they're using peaceful protest. They went to the IEC, they went to the Constitutional Court, and they boycotted the first session of cabinet, peaceful protest, and he says they will continue in that manner, despite what anybody thinks.
And Wenzel, thank you so much for giving us that breakdown at the start of the week of the shifts currently underway in South Africa's volatile political landscape following the ANC losing its parliamentary majority in last month's vote. Now, in other news, the mourning continued as Malawi's Vice President, Saulos Chilima, was buried in his home village on Monday, a day after Sunday's state funeral. Now, he and 9 others died in a plane crash in the north of Malawi last week. Malawians gathered throughout the capital, Lilongwe, in remembrance of 51-year-old Chilima, whilst dignitaries attended Sunday's ceremony at the Bingu Stadium. Some have accused authorities of not having mounted a search and rescue mission quickly enough after his military plane disappeared. President Lazarus Chakwera has called for an independent investigation into the crash. And testimony from African migrants has contributed to allegations in a BBC report that Greek coastguards have thrown people arriving on its shores back into the sea, some reportedly with their hands still bound. Athens has strongly denied this. Activists have shared footage with BBC investigators that appear to show people, including women and babies, being put onto a Coast Guard boat and then later abandoned to drift in the sea on a raft. One Cameroonian man alleges that he was hunted after landing in Samos in 2021 and that he personally saw other people, including an Ivorian, thrown into the water and begging for his life before he died. The BBC says it believes that at least 43 migrants thrown into the sea by Greek coastguards have drowned over 15 incidents recorded between 2020 and 2023. Ghana risks losing millions of dollars worth of life-saving malaria and TB medication unless it pays outstanding fees for the cargo to be cleared. Around 118 containers of the drugs, which were donated by the Global Fund, have been stuck in Tema port since last year, and they risk expiring if authorities don't move fast. The Ghanaian Medical Association is also worried that the loss of the stalled shipments could lead to a national shortage of some essential drugs. Justice Baidu has more.
The medicines that are currently locked up at the port are part of a 42 million euros worth of health commodities that were procured by the Global Fund under the GC64 Ghana program. The government could not pay for the clearance duties within the stipulated 2 weeks, which is the time when goods are expected to be cleared at port in Ghana, thereby attracting these penalties. Meanwhile, hospitals across the country are currently battling a critical shortage of medicines, especially those for HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis, in part due to this backlog at the port.
35 human beings in Ghana are estimated to be dying of TB daily. How many people die annually? So for governments to have a lackadaisical attitude towards financing TB, it's putting the entire country in a doldrum of, I don't know how to explain it. Civil society have said this over and over. We've called on government, we have gone to parliament, we're calling on government every day, finance TB, finance TB, finance TB. People are dying. When COVID came to this country, nobody died before the president allocated a $100 million facility for COVID control.
Following the huge agitations that civil society has embarked on in Ghana, especially within this week, the government now says it has released around 470,000 euros to clear these goods before the end of June.
Justice Baidu there for us. Now, hospital staff from the northern Ethiopian region of Tigray say that more than 120,000 women were raped during the brutal 2-year war with the federal government. Some survivors accuse Eritrean and Ethiopian troops of having forced them into sexual slavery. With 70% of medical facilities in Tigray having been destroyed in the war, victims are struggling to find the help that they need. Our team reports.
3 years ago, during the war in Tigray, 7 Eritrean soldiers killed this woman's husband in front of her eyes and then raped her. She's come here for help and has covered herself up to protect her identity.
They inserted metal into my uterus and this caused an infection. Doctors removed it, but I'm still bleeding, and psychologically I'm really struggling. I've got nothing left to live for. That's why I came here.
More than 120,000 women are believed to have been raped during the war. But that figure may be far higher.
The main issue is that they don't dare go out to get their treatment and to get help. They're afraid they'll be spotted and could be stigmatized.
15% of women Meseret has helped are HIV positive. But the only public centre here working with rape survivors doesn't have the resources to help them.
They have not any humanitarian support. They are blood vomiting because the medication are taken on impedes too much. Most of the medications they need are in private setting. Now in Sun, we haven't proper medications. The demand and supply is not comparable.
More than 50 women come here each day, but staff at the centre fear that many more can't afford to even get here and are left to wrestle alone with the devastating trauma caused by rape as a weapon of war.
That harrowing report by our team in Ethiopia. That is what we'll have to leave Eye on Africa for now. Thank you very much for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.